I just took and passed the PL-100 a few weeks ago, and I have created this list of different questions that I know are particularly applicable to what could be on the exam. We are covering 40 different practice problems. These questions are going to be pretty similar to the different practice problems that I had prior to my exam. As well, these questions are going to highlight a lot of the themes that I felt were on the exam that I personally took. The order doesn't particularly matter, that this is part 2, so go ahead and watch this and then go back and check out part 1 for another 20 problems. Let's get into it. So question 21 here, a company is simplifying communications by using Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Power Platform technologies. A Power Automate flow watches social media channels to identify trends that are classified as high impact. When the Power Automate flow identifies the trends, consistently formatted feedback must be collected from the channel members within Teams. You need to configure Power Automate and Teams communication processes. Which should you use? So A here for AI Builder, I don't think it's going to be A because we're using Power Automate to identify trends. There could be a potential AI model that would do that, but that's not what we're doing in this situation. Let's go ahead and cross off A. Common data service, the business process flows. Business process flow is not related to what we're doing here, so let's go ahead and cross B off. And then C, adaptive cards. This is beginning to sound like our answer. Adaptive cards are going to be applicable to Microsoft Teams and Power Automate, and when you're using those together. Power Automate can send these adaptive cards to different team members in Teams and have them fill out a different survey questions and then submit that back to the Dataverse. I personally have experience of doing this on a project where we did this to automatically send in our daily updates on what we worked on for the day. This is going to be done with adaptive cards. Question 22, you are building an interactive dashboard for a model-driven app, and the report will use about 6 million records. The query that retrieves requires more than 5 minutes to complete. You need to create the report. Which option should you use? So I think there's one major clue here, and that's going to be that we are trying to look at 6 million or more records. This is going to be done in Power BI. In part 1, we talked about different Power BI capabilities, so make sure you go back and check that out after this video. If it's going to be something that's really extensive or complicated relating to reporting or data analysis, it's going to direct you to Power BI. Let's go ahead and move on to question 23, and there's a lot of words on the screen, but let's go ahead and break it down. You are creating a Canvas app that displays a list of accounts. Users must be able to select an account and then view additional details for the account. The app must include a feature that brings the user back to the list of accounts. Okay, so we need a list of accounts screen, a details screen, and a back button. That's what that's saying. You add a blank screen named Screen All Accounts and a gallery named Gallery All Accounts to the screen. You set the data source of the Gallery All Accounts to Accounts and add another blank screen named Screen Account Detail. You need to finish the app configuration. What are 2 possible ways to achieve this goal? Okay, so we have a screen that shows all of our accounts with in a gallery, and then we have a account detail screen that is to show the individual account's information, and on that screen we need a back button. So let's go ahead and read this top left one. Add an edit form to the screen account detail and set the default mode of the form to view. Set the on-select property of gallery accounts to navigate to screen detail. That's correct. Set the data source of the form to accounts. Yep, that's correct. Set the item property of the form to selected. That's correct. Add a back icon on the screen account detail and set its on-select property to navigate to the all account screen. Yeah, that sounds correct to me. I'm going to go ahead and say that that one is right. So there's 2 possible ways to achieve this goal, and each one presents a complete solution. So there's one more that we're looking in here. Let's go ahead and look at the bottom left. Add an edit form to the screen account detail and set the mode of the form to view. Yeah, that sounds right. Set the on select property of the gallery all accounts to navigate to the screen account detail. Yeah, that sounds right. Set the data source of the form to accounts. That sounds right as well. Set the item property of the form to first accounts. See, we don't want to go to the first account. We want to go to the selected account. So that one's going to be wrong. Let's go ahead and go to the top right. Add an edit form to screen account detail and set the default mode of the form to new. No, we don't want a new one. We want to view the account that we selected. So that one is incorrect as well. So that leaves us with D, but let's just read it over. Add a display form to screen account detail. Set the on select property of gallery accounts. Set the data source of the form to accounts. Set the item property to selected. And add a back icon on screen account details and set its on property. That sounds correct as well. Now I know the first bullet point in that is a little bit different, but that is 2 ways to achieve that. So this is going to be A and D. This top left and the bottom right. Definitely a lot going on here, but it's just asking you the different functions and ways to set up galleries and screens in Canvas apps. Question 24. A company uses Power Virtual Agents and Microsoft Teams to show Dataverse data to employees. You create a chatbot that retrieves a list of customers by postal code from a Dataverse table. The chatbot will accept requests from a user and must connect to Dataverse to retrieve the data. You need to connect the chatbot to the Dataverse table. Okay, so this is another great example of how Microsoft is giving us a ton more information and then just ask one little question. So, in all honesty, we could have saved time by skipping all that and just reading this last sentence. You need to connect the chatbot to the Dataverse table. What do you use? So, chatbots do not automatically look and connect to Dataverse. That can only be done through Power Automate. You cannot connect them you cannot have them look at a Dataverse table directly with A. You can't have them look through Power App. You can't have them look through Teams. You can't have them look through another bot. This can only be done by using a Power Automate, where you then have the bot call the Automate. The Automate then calls Dataverse and pulls that information and then hands it back to the bot. So question 24 here is going to be E. You are developing a Canvas app to monitor time. The app includes a text input control named TIC1 and a timer control named TIM1. You need to set TIM1 to a default value. Which should you do? Assign the text property of TIC1 to the onSelect property of TIM1. That doesn't really make sense. We don't want the onSelect property to be the text of TIC1, so I don't think it's A. B, assign the text property of TIC1 to the duration property of timer1. That might be it. Let's go ahead and parking lot that. Assign the text property of TIC1 to the onTimerStart property. No, it's not the onTimerStart. Write code on the onChange property that assigns the value of the duration property of the timer control to text property on the change. No, this doesn't sound right. So I'm going to go ahead and say this one is B, and that is correct. You are going to want to make sure that the text property of TIC1 is set to the duration property of TIM1 for this situation. Question 26. Multiple departments in your organization use a model-driven app to manage corporate data. Users from one department request that all their department's custom tables be separated to their own area within the app. You need to update the sitemap. Which 3 steps should you do in order? There's several different hierarchy tiers of a sitemap, and that is going to be what we're looking for here. The 3 tiers, the 3 steps we need to configure in order. And so after looking at these, we have sub area, dashboard. That doesn't really make any sense. New group or an area. So we're looking at group, at sub area, group, and area. And of those, the biggest one, the first one, is going to be area. This is going to be in the bottom left-hand corner of your app, where you can change the area to a completely different sitemap. So in the same app, different users can have the different experiences, even though they're all in the same app, and that's because they're in a different area. And then in each area, you're going to have groupings, and those are going to be your groups. This is going to be where you're going to have a little header, and then all of the related sub areas in that group. And I know I just alluded to the last one. Then the smallest thing is the sub area. Those are going to be the actual things you can click on. These are going to be your tables, your different dashboards, things like that. Then the grouping of sub areas underneath a certain header, this is going to show that all of these sub areas are related in a group, and this is all on the the area of the sitemap. So again, the highest tier is going to be area, and then group, and then sub area. That's what you're looking for here. Number 27, a company uses Power Apps. You embed a Canvas app in a model-driven app form. You need to bind the app to a form component. Which form component should you use? So if you're not familiar, you can actually do what's called embedding a Canvas app that you've built into a form on your model-driven app. And this is wondering which type of form component can you embed a Canvas app to. So let's go ahead and look. What are the form components here? We have a view, which is not even a form component. So we can cross that one off right away. And then in a form, you can have different sections, columns, and tabs. And a tab is going to be the biggest. A tab could have several columns, and then a column can have several sections. So what can we embed a Canvas app to? You cannot embed a Canvas app directly to a section. You actually need a column. So if you have a tab on your form in your model-driven app, you can have 2 columns in that tab, and one of those columns could be completely dedicated to a Canvas app. And then your other column can have different sections that might relate to different Dataverse data. So this one, you're going to want to know that the Canvas app can be embedded to a column. It can't be embedded to a tab, can't be embedded to a section. Let's go ahead and get into question 28. Question 28 is a motorcycle company uses Power Apps. The company uses a model-driven app to manage customers, repairs, and more. The customer table has a custom text column named Best Time to Call. So on the customer table, we have a Best Time to Call field. On the repair form, so now we're on the repair table, we want the Best Time to Call column of the customer table to be displayed next to the customer name. You need to configure the model-driven app to display the Best Time to Call column on the repair form. Which 2 steps should you perform? Okay, so we want to, when looking at the repair form, so we are on the repair table, and there's some sort of relationship between repair and customer. We want to be able to look at the customer name and then that customer's record, best time to call, but we're not looking at the customer, we're looking at the repair. So in order to do that, we're going to need to utilize a quick view form. A quick view form is going to allow you to pull information from a related record directly on the form of that parent record in this case. So we're going to need to first do C, create a quick view form for the customer table. This won't be for the repair table because we're not trying to view repair data, we're trying to view customer data. So create a quick view form on the customer table. So now that we've created a customer quick view, we now need to do D, add the best time to call, which is on the customer table, to the customer quick view form. You can then add the customer quick view form onto the repair main form, which is going to achieve what we want here. You can't do A because the best time to call column is not on the repair form, it's on the customer form, so that automatically crosses off A. I hope this is beginning to make sense, but just to explain again, a quick view form is going to allow you to view information on a related record without having to actually navigate to that record. And so that is what we're going to utilize here, and that can be done here in C and D. Question 29, so a company uses Power Automate, and the company requires 3 cloud flows for the following. We want to send email notifications to an employee after an expense request is approved. Okay, when a file is uploaded to OneDrive, forward the files as an email attachment. Okay. Send an email at 8 a.m. on Mondays to remind team members who did not submit their timesheets. Okay, so we have 3 different types of cloud flows, and we need to create them. Which cloud flows should you create? So our options for cloud flows are going to be an automated cloud flow, an instant cloud flow, and a scheduled cloud flow. So automated cloud flows are going to be when X happens with no user or person input, do this. An instant is going to be used for either child flows, where we want one flow to trigger another, or you can set up instant to trigger off of the push of a button in an app. Scheduled then are exactly what they sound. Those run when a certain time threshold is met, and you can have this be repeating, say every Monday at 8 a.m., every month, every year, every day, every hour. So for our first option here, send notifications after expense request approvals. To me, this one is actually the most tricky out of all three of them because we want to send an email notification. And typically, when you're wanting to send an email notification, that is going to be an automated cloud flow. But the trigger is what gets me a little tripped up. It's because we want to only do that and after an expense request is approved. So in this situation, it's likely to assume that the expense request approval process is its own automated flow and an approval flow. And if this is approved, we then want to do this. That to me sounds like a child flow, making this first situation an instant cloud flow. Again, child flows are going to be instant cloud flows, not automated. But I do know there's some people that might disagree with me on this, and that is fine. If you want to put automated, I'm not going to argue with that. But to me, this suggests that it's a cloud flow based off of a previous approval flow. And because of that reason, I put instant. Next, then, we want to forward OneDrive files as attachments. This is going to be automatic of whenever a file is uploaded. We don't want any user input. There's no previous flow that's causing this to be triggered. So that to me, yes, 100% is an automated flow. And then the last one, this one seems the easiest. Every single one of you guys can get this on this exam. This is a scheduled flow. At a certain time, we want this to happen. So these are going to be my answers and what I would recommend you do on your exam. We are now to question 30. We are halfway through our part 2 video, 3/4 of the way through all 40 questions. Let's go ahead and keep trucking along here, crushing these out and learning what we can. So you are creating an employee directory Canvas app. The app must display name, address, and a photo of each employee. You need to select a control type that will display the employee records. Which control type should you select? So we're wanting something to display all of our employee records, a list of our employee records, all on a screen in a Canvas app. Now I know I said list, but this is not going to be a list box. An address input, we're not doing anything related to addresses. This is going to be a gallery. In Canvas apps, galleries essentially, in my mind, work as the views of model-driven apps. And that's not entirely correct. If you eat, sleep, and breathe the Power Platform, you will know, and you can disagree with me on that. And I'm not saying that is the case either. But galleries in this situation are going to have that same effect. They're going to be able to display the information, the list of employee records for you. That's going to be done in a gallery. Question 31. So you are an app maker. You want to create apps and track customizations in the default solution. What is an impact of working in the default solution? It's safe to say that nobody in their right mind would actually work consistently in a default solution, and that is because there are several different pitfalls in the default solution, and that's kind of what this question is getting at. But let's go ahead and work through these. So A is the default solution does not contain all components and customizations. That is incorrect. That is the whole purpose of the default solution, is absolutely everything that is in the system, whether it's out of the box, pre-built, or custom, is automatically added to the default solution. That is what the default solution does. B, the prefix used when creating components as part of the default solution can be set to a specific value. That is not true as well. That can be done on custom solutions, not the default one of ones you build. But on the default solution, you can't change the prefix. So that crosses off A and B and leaves us with C. The default solution cannot be exported and distributed to another environment. That is correct. You have to just add all of the components to another solution, and then you can export that as a managed solution. So you are creating a Power Automate flow, and you have an array that contains items with different colors, and you plan to filter the array by using the following filter expression within the flow. Let's go ahead and follow my mouse here. I want to explain what this expression is doing. It's saying if the item color, right here, the item color equals blue, or, because this comma, if the item color equals blue, or the item color contains green, the filter returns results only when the expression is true. So for each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. So we're looking for a color that is either blue or contains green. So the expression yields a result if the array contains the color orange. Nope, it is not going to be that. The expression yields a result if the array contains the color blue. Yep, that it will be correct because it equals item color blue. The expression yields as a result if the array contains the color forest green. This is correct as well. That color forest green contains green. Now, if one of these options contains the color sky blue, now that would be false because the item does not equal blue or contain green. It contains blue. So that can be tricky, but make sure it's either equals blue or contains green. Just kind of really pay attention and think through that logic. But these are going to be the answers here and the process you should follow if you were to get a similar question. Question 33. So you are building a Canvas app in a dev environment and add the app to a solution. You export the solution from the dev environment and import the solution into a prod environment. After 1 week, you notice the background color of the app in prod has changed from blue to a navy. You need to determine why the background color changed. What are 2 possible causes for the background color change? Okay, so we had what we thought was a managed solution in prod, but because something was changed, that would suggest that it is not actually managed. But let's go ahead and see what these are. You recently changed the Office 365 theme. The Office 365 theme is not going to have an impact on your Power Apps, so it's not. We can go ahead and cross that off. You exported a managed copy of the solution and imported the solution as an unmanaged solution. You modified the Canvas app in the unmanaged solution. Now, at first instinct, you're like, oh yeah, boom, unmanaged solution. But you can't export a solution as managed and import it as unmanaged. Once it's exported as a certain type, it can only be imported as that type. So B is actually not possible. So that leaves us with C and D, but let's talk about them. So you exported and imported an unmanaged copy of the solution, and a coworker modified the app. Yes, that could be a very possible explanation for why this happened, because if it's unmanaged, it can be changed. It's not locked down. Maybe somebody else just thought they were changing their own, but in fact changed the whole app. And then D, you chose a different theme from the theme menu inside the Canvas app. Themes are a little bit different, and you really don't need to know much more about themes than this here, but that would also change the color from blue to navy if you were to change the theme. So the answers to these are C and D, and I know you're going to get that one right. Question 34 is, you must use the Test Studio to create automated tests and confirm that a recently developed app works as expected. You need to organize your test scenarios into a hierarchy. In which order should you create the objects? So now we're talking about testing. We're not talking about anything too technical. So go ahead and take your technical hat off and put on your conceptual hat. And now we want to think about, okay, how is testing conducted for our Microsoft Power Platform components? The first thing you're going to have to do is design test suites. A test suite is going to be then where you can outline maybe the big picture of what you want to happen, or it is the container of all of the little tests you want to have happen. Each test suite is going to be made up of test cases. So a test suite can have several different test cases. A test case could say, hey, we want to test this. And another test case could say, hey, we want to test this, and then test this, and then test this. So you're going to have all these different things that you're testing in different test cases, all under one test suite. And then test steps are going to be the actual steps that a tester would follow within the case. So it would say, hey, click on this, and then click on this, and then save this record, and update this, right? These are examples of different test steps that are going to be within test cases, which are then within the test suite, right? And then the last thing is going to be test assertions. This is basically the outcome of your tests and of the test cases. And so you obviously need your test cases and test steps in order to make test assertions. So the order is going to be suites, cases, steps, assertions. Make sure you know that one. Question 35. You create an app with multiple screens. Test users report that the size and type of gallery displayed in each screen are inconsistent. You need to improve the experience for the app's users. You need to create a reusable gallery that displays information based on the current record. Which 3 things should you do? So we have several different screens, and there's a gallery on these different screens, and they all look different. They might have a different color, different font, different size, and we want them to all be uniform. What we need to do first is create a component. This component is then going to be in your component library, which can be used across different screens throughout your app. And now, because we are trying to control a gallery, we're not trying to add an output property or a screen, you now need a gallery control. So you're going to create a component, then you're going to add a gallery control, and then lastly, you're going to add an input property onto that gallery control on that component in your component library. And then that way, on every screen, it's going to point to this component in your library, and it's going to be uniform. So these are your answers here. You got A, B, C. You're not going to create a form. You're not looking to add another screen, and you don't need an output property. Number 36, so you create a personal view, and you need to ensure that other users can access the view. What should you do? So there's different types of views in Dataverse. You can have personal views and system views. System views are going to be created by administrators, typically, and added to the app. And now every user of the app, assuming they have security privileges, is going to then have that view in there. So that's for system views. They're system-wide. Every user, again, assuming they have the privileges, can actually modify those system views and create their own personal views. Personal views are going to be created on a per-user basis, where they can go and add different fields and different filtering and different sorting to their views in their app, and they can save those and come back to them whenever they were to, say, open up their app. They could go to their personal views. And now what we want to do is to ensure another user can access a personal view that I created. How would this be done? This is going to be done by sharing the view with the users. You can't set the view as a default view. A default view is strictly for system views. This is where if you were to click on a table on the sitemap, the initial view that loads, that's the default view. This has to be a system view. You cannot assign the view to users. That can only be a system view. And lastly, D, you cannot email users a link to your view. You can only share it with them in the app. So this is going to leave us with A, and on to question 37. You create a Power Platform solution. Solution data is stored in a variety of documented cloud services. You need to configure the data sources. What should you do? So we have different ways to configure data sources here, and we're looking to connect the Power Platform to our variety of documented cloud services. So part A right away is a no-go, because data gateways are specifically used for on-premise data, and because this is cloud service, that's not going to be on-premise. So let's go ahead and cross A off. A content pack is not going to be related to moving solution data and storing that. So we can go ahead and cross B off as well. Create a custom data connector. That sounds right to me. D, create a data policy template. Yeah, that's not it. So this is going to be C, create a custom data connector. You might get several different questions. I find that more times than not, it tends to be custom data connector. There's different things that could lead to this. But if you're looking for something that is going to connect the Power Platform to documented cloud services, you're going to be leaning towards a custom data connector. Question 38. This is a fun one. So a company uses a Canvas app. The last published version of the app is version 18. So we have an app, and the version is 18. You edit and save your updates, then run the app. And when you test the app, you discover you deleted a screen. You need to restore the last published version. What is the version number of the app after you restore it? So let's think through this process. We have app version 18. We then edit and save the app. Once you save or make a change and save those changes, the version number actually gets updated and increased. So whether this went to version number 19 or version 18.1, the version number at this point, after we are now running our app, is no longer 18. It's now the next version. And that new version we discover has a deleted screen. We want to revert it. You're going to be reverting it back to 18, not to 17. But whenever you update and save your app. You don't have to publish, but just saving it is going to increase the version number on your app. So then if you restore it, you're going to be restoring it back to 18, which is B here. Question 39, so a company creates cases in Dataverse each day with the status of new, and for all cases with the status of new, the system must send an email to the customer and then change the status to in process. You need to create a Microsoft Power Automate Cloud Flow to send the email automatically. How should you design the cloud flow? Okay, so our different cloud flows again are instant, automated, and scheduled. And so one of these three is going to be one of those, and it's going to help us achieve this. So let's go ahead and read what we're asking again to make sure we really understand it. We want to find all of the cases with a status of new, and then send an email to those customers of all of those cases, and then mark all of those cases as in progress. Change the status. So question A says trigger the flow on a schedule, and then configure the flow to use the compose data operation to get a list of cases. That can't be done with compose, so I think that there crosses off A. Let's go to B, trigger the flow on a schedule and then configure the flow to use the data list rows action to query case records using a filter. That filter would be with status of new. And then send an email to each from inside a loop. That to me sounds right, but I don't know if a scheduled flow would be the best way to do this, but I don't think B is inherently wrong from what it's given us. So let's keep that in the back of our mind. Let's go ahead and go to C. Trigger the flow when the case is updated. No, that's not right. We don't want to update the case and then send the email. We want to send the email and then change the status. So C is not right. Trigger the flow manually on the case and then configure the flow to send the email. See, that one sounds potentially right to me as well, but I think there's one little hint that it gives us. In the statement explaining what we want it to do, we want the system to send an email. And so I think that would eliminate D, to trigger the flow manually, is because that wouldn't be the system sending it. That would be a user or a caseworker to send it. So that's going to cross off D and leave us with B, trigger the flow on a schedule. Now this might be something where you actually want it to be an automated cloud flow, but for this situation, they're wanting to use a schedule. Say at the end of every workday, we want to find all of the new cases from the day and then send the email and mark it as in progress for then tomorrow. That would be the situation here. So the answer here is going to be B. In the last question of this video, we have question 40. You need to set the value for a global variable named accounts viewed to 4 and navigate to the previous screen named main screen. Which formula should you use? So we're talking about global variables here. Let's see which functions relate to global variables. See, right off the bat for A and C, the update context function is not related to global variables. So this is actually going to cross off A and C right away because we're not looking to update the context. We're looking to use the set function, which is in B and D. B, what's tricky to me is it has this value text box 1 dot text greater than 0. I don't really know why that's there. If we had more information, there might be something related to that, but we need to go off just what it's given us. And considering what it's given us is just set the accounts view to 4 and then go back, that's going to point us to D. B is going to give us maybe more information than we need or do more things than we need, so that's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for D using the set and the back functions. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. My goal is for you to be as prepared as you can, and I'm telling you, the fact that you've made it this far, you are going to absolutely crush out your exam. These were handpicked by me and what I thought were really applicable to know for the exam that I took and passed. If you have not already gone through the first 20 problems, I'm going to highly recommend you do that by clicking on this video here. And as always, guys, my name is Griffin Lickfeld. Thank you guys for sticking to the end of the video. If you are a fan, let me know in the comments down below. Do you like these sort of videos? Are they helpful? Should I cover things like practice problems or more just overall study guide? Thank you guys so much for sticking to the end of the video. We'll see you in the next one.